Welcome to the ET Starship Ultimate Edition tutorial, episode 3 of 5. In episodes 1 and 2, we accomplished most of the assembly, texture, paint, and weathering. Here, we'll finish the landing gear and install inexpensive LEDs. We begin working with the light core and conclude with finishing the entire lower half of the Starship. On the bottom hull ring, we need to introduce a hole right in that. There's a little square indicator here. There's an indent right there, and that is where this octagonal landing gear hull mount fits, and it comes in at an angle. Show you how it, well, you can't really see it, but it's coming out at an angle. So I'm going to start this hole. I'm using a Forstner bit, by the way. This is the best. This is the cleanest hole you could make, is with a Forstner bit. Thanks to Adam Savage for teaching me about these. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the center, at the lower portion of that indent. I'm going to start my hole. And then I'm going to angle it. Okay, I'm all the way through. Now that comes down, like I showed you, that octagonal mount comes in at an angle. So I'm going to angle this downwards like this and finish that hole. Angle, whoops, about like this. Just to save myself a little bit of time, I'm going to pre-shade these with a little bit of rattle can primer gray, and then we'll airbrush the rest. Let's go ahead and paint the lower part of the ship, the lower hull, the landing gear, the feet, all that. I am going to be using Archive X SP lettering gray. Straight out of the bottle, it's a little bit light, so I added just a few drops of black. Be careful when you do that, because that black is strong. I'm also going to use that same gray color to paint these landing ramps. 2 parts. Make sure that you peel off that protective paper. Let's put this landing gear together. So each set is 2 legs, a foot mount pin, 2 brackets, and a hull mount pin. So we are going to start with the outside bracket. And make sure when you're putting these on, you'll see one end has a dip and the other end is flat. The flat end aims inside. So this is this side, that's that side. Okay, so through the divot side, we're putting our pin in. And you can use brass. I'm using polycarb rods. Then your landing leg goes on, then your foot pin, okay, and then your next landing leg, and then your next bracket, and we're going to get these landing legs out of our way and grab our second pin. Through the outside bracket, through the octagonal pin, pylon, and it comes through the opposite bracket, so the orientation is the foot pin grab this foot so I can show you this. Foot pin's cast a little bit long. I might need to trim that down or bury the hole a little bit deeper. I'll probably trim that pin. Okay, can you see that? So the pin goes in, these angle forward into the hull, these pitch up, and then this comes up into the hull plate, into the bottom hull ring. I'm not going to be trimming these rods just yet. I want to wait until I get everything fitted up into the hull. Before I assemble this lower hull with the landing gear, I'm going to prepare it for some LED lights. I'm introducing 2 lights in each landing well, one deep in the well and one directly on the landing gear. So I need to do an access hole. We install our landing legs by inserting the octagonal pylon in first. And because we didn't secure the pins down yet, lock them in yet, I can shift them to where I can slide them into those 2 grooves that are cast in place. It takes a little bit of fishing to get them through there, but they'll go. Okay, I had to change my angle there a little bit, but now you can see that these landing legs are through. I'm going to bring my my engine bell in. The 2 blue lights are on either side of the ramp opening. Okay, I've got my landing legs adjusted just the way I need them. These are up at an angle. These are going inside the body. They're all matching. I've got a level on top of this guy. I'm level this way, that way. I did it like 4 different times and I'm perfectly level. So now it's time to lock things in position. What I'm doing is using a little bit of CA, and I'm just putting some on these joints. Don't want them to move anymore after this. So I'm just locking those in, and then I'm grabbing some spray kicker and permanently bonding that. Make sure also that you're using plenty of adhesive on these pylons on the interior. And also make sure you've got adhesive going on where the legs meet the hull, because in a few minutes we'll be trimming off these excess posts and these excess posts. Let's get into weathering this lower hull. My reference shots are showing me that I have a lot of staining here at the bottom of this ring. This is generally darkened and stained. Inside of the landing gear well is dark. Okay, so what I do to one, I do to the other 2. So I'm going to appreciate this a tiny bit. I don't want to lose that copper color, so just really lightly, just shade that bell. Okay, darker gray. Now I'm going to start getting serious about getting things darker in that well. This is looking a tad bit sterile, needs more layering, so I'm going in with AK Interactive Engine Grime and streaking effects. This goes on real transparent and light, provides for a really nice stain, and I'm just going to come in and stain up these mechanics a tiny bit. First with my engine grime, and then I'll come in with streaking effects. So I'll stain down here, I'll stain these insulators. Up here, I'll get into this well. Okay, yeah, and I'm seeing some color here that you might not be able to see, but it's making a big difference. I did much of that off camera, but you can see some streaking that I put here on the copper bell. I've got it really dark here where it needs to be, on the mechanics where it meets the feet. I've got some color going on the body, and just really happy with the streaking. I was going vertical with my brush. I was just kind of like streaking down. You get that really nice effect. Let's go ahead and prepare the ramp. The ramp is 4 total pieces. You've got a acrylic frame, an etched acrylic frame, and the etched goes on top of the acrylic frame, so you get this idea. Alright, so we don't need those. We're going to prepare these. We need to take the protective wrapping off of either one or both sides. Looks like this one is on one side. I've had a couple people ask me why these ramps are blue, but they're not. It's just the protective wrapping. It prevents scorching when I laser cut these. I want the etched side to be facing upwards. You can very easily feel the etched side compared to the smooth side. I have some acrylic that's just watered down. This is cheap hobby store, dollar store acrylic. Yeah, might be a little thin. Let's see. That is a bit thin. Hold on a second. I very carefully program my machine to etch it just deep enough to not compromise the strength and to give you enough bite for this paint to adhere inside the etch. Alright, so once you're there, just wipe off. Make sure there's no paint on the back side. And you end up with this really fine grid. And then we attach that grid to the frame, and you have this. And then we butt them up against each other, because that landing ramp folds down, and we have that arrangement. I'm going to be installing 2 LEDs per landing leg. There's going to be an amber LED that sits here on top of the post, and then another white LED sitting inside that well, deep where you can see that hole right there. That'll squeeze right in there. So, I don't have any amber LEDs, but what I do have is Krylon stained glass orange and Krylon stained glass cranberry red. You can mix up a clear Tamiya batch and easily airbrush these real quick too. But let me get these out of the way. So I'm just going to take each little bulb here and just real quick, just give it a little bit of an orange, and then just a touch of this cranberry red. And that'll give me a nice ambery color for those feet.
I like using corrugated cardboard to figure out templates because
we're going to light this lower hull engine bell And to do that, I'm using this add-on kit. Let me show you how this all works. Okay, so your add-on for the lower light assembly are these 4 parts. We're going to start by inserting our LED pressure fit into that piece of foam. They go through the small section of PVC included in that little add-on kit. I'm going to bury it just a little bit in there. I don't want it really on the surface, just a little bit buried. A little bit of CA glue to the inside just to make sure it doesn't slide in or out. You have 2 different sized rings, mount rings. The smaller one is what's going to fit inside, beneath the hole, inside that hole. And we're stringing 4 blue lights around that perimeter. Your larger ring, once those are in place, is going to glue to the top of that core. Something like this. Alright, but first, before we move on, I'm going to go ahead and mark off 4 separate locations facing each other. There's one here, 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 and here. And our goal is to take those blue tinted LEDs and just sort of have them facing out just a tiny bit, mostly embedded inside that foam. So I'm going to Dremel a little hole into those 4 locations, make a little slit, and embed these LEDs into those 4 spots. Make sure that they're not popping out too far, because you do need to slide that inside of that hole there. I'm using 3mm LEDs. They're a little bit smaller, allows me a little more room, wiggle room. And I've only got white, but you can turn a white LED into a blue LED just by spraying a little bit of translucent paint. This is Tamiya Clear Blue. You can also use a Tamiya opaque paint that's thinned down so it's transparent. Okay, 4 blue LEDs. I embedded those little 3mm in there. Here's what our core looks like. I have the wires feeding up into that larger base, and we are going to hot glue this into place. Make sure that you can slide that upper base into a position that allows those lights to be level with the openings, and then make sure that you put those blue lights parallel with those blue openings. I've got all my wires spliced together. I've got things organized. Here's my extensions, positive and negative, so I know what comes out of that whole plate. I put 2 futures here for the landing ramp. We'll install our landing ramp. There's a bit of a ledge inside here that it rests on. I'll use a little bit of CA to secure that. And then we have 2 posts. These are just cut acrylic, and those are going to come down from up here and join right at that frame join. And then we will go ahead and attach our LEDs down those arms, down at the base of the ramp, the surface of the ramp. Here's the ramp in place. I've got my lights installed. This is looking crazy, man. And then, whoops, under the engine bell, I can see all the lights individually lit up. I've got my landing gear wells, a light on the landing gear leg. The ramp lights are set up. Yeah, man. Let's button this bottom hole up. I'm going to disconnect these temporary connections. And if you're using the standard kit, you've got this ring, and that adheres onto that lower hole. If you're using the add-on kit that I designed with this lighting package, you're going to line this up. I'm going to bring my 2 leads through this hole, I think. I'm going to tuck all this in. Make sure this plate lies nice and flat, like that. No wires in the way. I've got my leads coming out here, and I'll use some 5-minute epoxy. I've got a 2-pound weight here, and I'll just go ahead and lay that down as that epoxy dries. Now that I have things buttoned up, I think I'm going to attach the language ring in place with a little bit of epoxy again, and I'll weigh it down with that 2-pound weight again. Now that I have the whole ring plate attached to the lower hole, the language ring with vents attached to all that, we can get to weathering, our final stage of weathering. And you can see from the reference photos that we've got streaks that are starting at the language ring and running down. We've got staining up here on the ring. There's another big drip there. There's another big drip over there. To achieve that sort of translucent look to the staining over silver, I'm using a little spot of oil paint. Oil paint moves much differently than acrylic, much differently than enamel. This is Winton Ivory Black oil paint, and I'm thinning it. Really important what you use for your thinner with oil. This is white spirits. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to make a put a big blotch of that solvent here, and I'm going to make a real loose batch over here, and if I want it to be darker, I can come over here and pull it out of this. Okay, so right above this landing well here on this part of the ring, we have some staining. You can see how already that's the perfect translucency. And then a little bit more over here. Then right on this side, we've got a big drip. So I'm going to introduce this vertical drip here. Done. I'm dipping into the paint that's not as diluted. And then over here, we've got a drip that starts with the ring, and it comes down a little more opaque. I'll grab a little bit more of my opaque paint that's on the side there. Just going to bring that down. A little more washed out here. Let's bring that up. Alright, so just keep going around your model and get those little streaks in. This is the end of episode 3. Click episode 4 to continue this ET Ultimate Edition build-up tutorial. My channel contains over 15 years of detailed tutorials, which I think you'll find useful. Thanks for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.